51st is Valtrex. Its generic is valacyclovir. Its class is antiviral and it's used for viral infection like herpes. 52nd is Reactin. Its generic is cetirizine. Its class is antihistamine and it's used for allergies. 53rd is Diclectin. Its generic is doxylamine and pyridoxine. Its class is anti-nauseant and it's used for nausea and vomiting during pregnancy. 54th is Vinpred. Its generic is prednisone. Its class is corticosteroid and it's used for inflammation. 55th is Imodium. Its generic is loperamide. Its class is antidiarrheal and it's used for diarrhea. So 56th is Macrobid. Its generic is nitrofurantoin. Its class is antibiotic and it's used for urinary tract bacterial infections. 57th is Prevacid. Its generic is lansoprazole. Its class is proton pump inhibitor and it's used for GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder or acidity. 58th is Norvasc. Its generic is amlodipine. Its class is calcium channel blocker and it's used for hypertension. 59th is Wellbutrin. Its generic is bupropion. Its class is antidepressant and it's used for depression. 60 is Tramastat. Its generic is tramadol and acetaminophen. Its class is analgesic and it's used for pain. 61st is Aspirin. Its generic is acetyl salicylic acid. Its class is NSAID, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, and it's used for pain, inflammation, and fever. 62 is Vasicare. Its generic is solifenacin. Its class is anticholinergic, and it's used for overactive bladder or frequent urination. 63rd is Claritin. Its generic is loratadine. Its class is antihistamine and it's used for allergies. 64th is Xarelto. Its generic is rivaroxaban. Its class is anticoagulant and it's used for blood clots. 65th is Neurontin. Its generic is gabapentin. Its class is anticonvulsant and it's used for seizures or neuropathic pain. 66th is Clozaril. Its generic is clozapine. Its class is antipsychotic and it's used for schizophrenia. 67th is Abilify. Its generic is aripiprazole. Its class is antipsychotic and it's used for psychotic disorders like schizophrenia. 68th is Keppra. Its generic is levetiracetam. Its class is anticonvulsant and it's used for seizures. 69th is Axalon. Its generic is rivastigmine. Its class is cholinergic agent and it's used for dementia. 70 is Dalacin. Its generic is clindamycin. Its class is antibiotic and it's used for bacterial infections. 71st is Gravol. Its generic is dimenhydrinate. Its class is anti-nauseant and it's used for nausea, vomiting, and dizziness. 72nd is Benadryl. Its generic is diphenhydramine. Its class is antihistamine, and it's used for symptoms of allergies. 73rd is Flomax. Its generic is tamsulosin. Its class is alpha blockers, and it's used for benign prostatic hyperplasia (BPH). 74th is Aleve. Its generic is naproxen. Its class is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, and it's used for pain, inflammation, and fever. 75th is Vyvanse. Its generic is lisdexamfetamine. Its class is CNS stimulant, and keep in mind it is a controlled substance, and it's used for ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. 76th is Periactin. Its generic is ciproheptadine. Its class is antihistamine, and it's used for relieving the symptoms of allergy, such as watery eyes, sneezing, etc. 77th is Cymbalta. Its generic is duloxetine. Its class is SNRI, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, and it's used for depression. 78th is diflucan. Its generic is fluconazole. Its class is antifungal, and it's used for fungal and yeast infections. 79th is Lamictal. Its generic is lamotrigine. Its class is anticonvulsant, and it's used for epilepsy or seizures. And 80 is Atarax. Its generic is hydroxyzine. Its class is antihistamine, and it's used for symptoms of itching due to allergies. 81st is Ciprodax. Its generic is ciprofloxacin and dexamethasone. Its class is antibiotic and corticosteroid together, and it's used for bacterial ear infections, so it is an ear drop. 82nd is Oragel. Its generic is benzocaine. Its class is local anesthetic, and it's used for pain relief and numbing medication for oral care. 83rd is HP Pack. Its generic is combination of lansoprazole, amoxicillin, and clarithromycin. Its class is proton pump inhibitor with the combination of antibiotics, and it's used to treat H. pylori infection. 84th is Vigamox. Its generic is moxifloxacin. Its class is antibiotic, and it's used for bacterial eye infections, so it is an eye drop. 85th is Arava. Its generic is leflunomide. Its class is disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, and it's used for rheumatoid arthritis. So 86th is Colchris. Its generic is colchicine. Its class is anti-gout agent, and it's used for treatment of gout. 87th is Thalitone. Its generic is chlorthalidone. Its class is diuretic, and it's used for hypertension. 88th is Dilantin. Its generic is phenytoin. Its class is anticonvulsant, and it's used for seizures. 89th is Rheumatrax. Its generic is methotrexate. Its class is anti-metabolite, and it's used for rheumatoid arthritis. 90 is Metonia. Its generic is metoclopramide. Its class is prokinetic agent, and it's used for emptying the stomach after surgery. So 91st is Rocephin. Its generic is ceftriaxone. Its class is antibiotic, and it's used for bacterial infections. 92nd is nitrostat. Its generic is nitroglycerin. Its class is nitrate, and it's used for chest pain. 93rd is Luracil. Its generic is baclofen. Its class is skeletal muscle relaxant, and it's used for muscle spasticity. 94th is Cytotec. Its generic is misoprostol. Its class is synthetic prostaglandin analog, and it's used for stomach ulcers. 95th is Proscar. Its generic is finasteride. Its class is alpha reductase inhibitor, and it's used for benign prostatic hyperplasia. 96th is Lamisil. Its generic is terbinafine. Its class is antifungal, and it's used for fungal infections like ringworm, etc. 97th is Sudafed. Its generic is pseudoephedrine. Its class is nasal decongestants, and it's used for temporary relief of stuffy nose, sinus pressure, and pain. 98th is Phenergan. Its generic is promethazine. Its class is antihistamine, and it's used for allergies, difficulty sleeping, and nausea. 99th is Carafate. Its generic is sucralfate. Its class is gastrointestinal agent, and it's used for preventing ulcers in the intestines. 100 is Bactrim or Septra. Its generic is sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim. Its class is antibiotic, and it's used for bacterial infections. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.